Good morning, everyone. I'm Stacy. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce our next guest, Sheriff Matt Gentry. He has some amazing things to tell us about the state of our community, so let's welcome him.
Good to see everybody this morning. I always enjoy coming and speaking here at Wallace, and we were talking the other day, and I was getting to speak for Miss Bruner and Miss O'Rear and them. This is the 17th year that I've been able to come to Wallace and speak, whether it was teaching drug classes or just speaking. So it's always a great blessing to be here. For me, it's an honor and a privilege to be the Sheriff of Coleman County. August 1st, I hit 22 years in law enforcement, and things have changed, times have changed, and so you know, what we see across the nation, what we see in our communities is ever changing. But I always tell everybody this: we live in the greatest county in the state of Alabama. I talk to the other 66 sheriffs and I tell them that, and I believe in that, and it's because of our citizens. It's each one of you that's in this room. You don't realize the impact that you have on a community. Everybody in this room is a leader. Everybody in this room will have a positive or negative influence on someone's life. And that's the same way we view it in law enforcement. The deputies, we kind of have a motto at the sheriff's office. The office of sheriff doesn't belong to me, it doesn't belong to the deputies, it belongs to all of us. And you think about it, you think about our state as a community, our state as a county, our state as a nation. If people join together and work together, that is a strength that is unbreakable. You think about standing out by yourself doing something, you're actually pretty weak. But when you join together as a group, you think about as a teacher, there's just one of you here doing something, you're not that strong. But if all of you bound together to do something, then think about the strength of that. Think about the experiences, the knowledge, the ability to do things that nobody else can do. And that's really what society and life's about today. I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're seeing in Coleman, what we're dealing with. But again, I want y'all to know what kind of blessing that y'all are to me in law enforcement. You know, you can walk in a room and give hugs and see folks, and that's what it's about. That's really what law enforcement's about. So in Coleman, we're no different than any other county in the state of Alabama. When you talk about things that we face, whether it's here at Wallace, whether it's out at the schools, of course drugs is one of the most prevalent things that we deal with. For here, meth is the most prevalent drug that we have in Coleman County. But in 2011, we started seeing heroin make a rise. And where that came from is our kids. And somebody says, well, what do you mean our kids? Well, when I graduated from Good Hope and when I went to high school, we would go see the bootlegger. And our goal was to go buy beer. And so for years and years and years, we've had MAD, we've had Mothers Against Drunk Driving, we've had education, we had DARE. So if you ask a kid today, do you drink and drive? No. It's why? Because we've educated them to that. But what we started seeing, and really it started about 2009 to 2011, was our children are not afraid of pills. Our children are not afraid to take a pill. And we started seeing that transition to them becoming addicted to opiates. So when they started becoming addicted to opiates, we started seeing them getting addicted to Oxycontin, Loratabs, now Norcos, all of those things, because in their mind, they have a thing that says the doctors prescribe it, it's made at a pharmacy, so it's okay. Well, in 2011, the pharmaceutical companies started changing the chemical makeup of Oxycontin, so you couldn't inject it anymore. And when that hit, the cartels, how many of you know that the cartels in Mexico are the greatest marketers in the world? Anybody? Anybody here in marketing? Anybody do marketing? Well, heck, nobody does marketing. Well, if you want to pattern a group of marketers, follow the drug cartels, because they are brilliant at finding the needs of people. So they started realizing that the needs of the United States was opiates. So they started cultivating their own heroin in Mexico and shipping it in. They decreased the amount of cocaine coming in, increased the amount of heroin, so it started hitting our target users across the U.S. So now in 2021, meth is still the top, but heroin is making a huge rise throughout our communities, whether it's Birmingham, Huntsville, Coleman, that's something that we're facing as a nation. And I think about law enforcement, I think about the society that we're in and the recruitment of law enforcement. Today, we're 8 down in law enforcement at the sheriff's office. We have 157 employees at the sheriff's office. Some of y'all know, some of you don't, but I worked narcotics for 11 years before the good Lord blessed me and put it on my heart to run for the office of sheriff. And you've seen a lot of changes. You've seen a lot of different things that are good and bad. And I go back to us as a society. I go back to us as law enforcement. Most people don't know this, but less than 1% of law enforcement will ever do something wrong. How many of you knew that? Less than 1% will ever do something wrong. And you're faced with decisions every day that are life-altering. And so I go back to accountability. One of the things that we lack today as a nation with our children, with the young men and women that y'all are teaching and growing up with, is accountability. They don't know how to have conflict resolution. And so I go back to accountability. I can remember being a very zealous narcotics agent. And this would have been about 2005, 2006. I think it was right before I got out of the Marine Corps. So I was still motivated. I was real motivated. And the sheriff came to me, which was Sheriff Roden. And I remember one time he said, "Hey, Matt, I want you to go out and arrest this guy. He's causing problems and he's causing havoc in the community." And when the sheriff comes to you and says, "Go get somebody," that's like answered prayers. You're like, "Thank you, Jesus." Because that's a sign. So we laid out in the woods for 8 hours. And I'll never forget Milford Parrish. He was our commander over the task force. And Milford had been in law enforcement longer than I'd been alive. And he had been in Vietnam and all this stuff. We're laid out in the woods, and I look over and Milford's asleep. I'm like, "Come on now, he might show up anytime." And so the guy arrives home. So we rush in, we get him, mission accomplished. I call the sheriff, "Hey, we got him." And so we're walking him out, and the guy stops and says, and he gets to my nose, we're face to face, and he says, "Why are you always blankety blank messing with me?" And I took that opportunity, and I think I had a flashback. If you can have PTSD, I had PTSD, and I was at Parris Island again. And I was like a drill instructor on steroids with him. It was not nice at what I told him. I explained to him what he did wrong and how bad he was and all that, and it was not nice. So I felt pretty good about myself. I was like, "Oh yes, my drill instructor, Sergeant Nash, would have been proud of me at Parris Island." So we get in the truck, and it's me and Brad Glenn, he was a lieutenant with the city, and Brett Holmes, who's now the chief deputy at the sheriff's office. So they're quiet. We get in the truck, and they're quiet. And I think, well, this is kind of weird. So in a minute, they said, "That made you look smaller than him." And I said, "What?" They said, "That made you look smaller than him." And I thought about that, and they were right. Accountability. They loved me enough to tell me the truth when I did something that was wrong. And that's where we should be at in society today. As all of you, you are leaders to our youth. You are leaders in the community. Accountability. We see it in law enforcement. How many of you knew that your sheriff's office answered 74,000 calls for service today? Your deputies are answering 74,000 calls for service a year today. We average 330 inmates a day in our jail. We have state inmates, we have federal inmates, we have city inmates, we have county inmates, and we're running about 330 a day. The call volume that we're experiencing is huge. Why? We're one of the fastest growing communities in the nation, in the state. I think we were in the top 10 of the nation. That's huge for our community. But with change brings adversity, brings things that we're not used to. And it takes great leadership. One of the things that we do at the Sheriff's Office that we love is our community. Most people don't know this, but we have multiple community meetings a year. I've got a big grill. We go out and we cook, whether we're at senior centers, we're at the communities, we're cooking. And somebody asked me one time, they said, "Why are you always cooking when you have meetings?" I said, "If you feed them, they will come." Right? If you feed them, they will come. And so when you do that, guess what it does? It puts us all sitting down at a table, eating, solving problems. And that's what we have to do as a community. That's what we have to do as a nation. We sit down and we solve problems. One of the things I'm very proud of is we have a great youth leadership program. How many of you know that we have a youth leadership program where we've graduated in the last 7 years over 200 students from our city schools, our county schools, and our private schools in Coleman County? And it's all based on leadership and patriotism. Leadership and patriotism. So we don't forget where we come from and where we're going as a nation. All those that have sacrificed everything for us to be able to sit in the building and talk freely. I think those are the things that we have to remind ourselves about in law enforcement and what we're doing today, because we forget. You know, Todd and I were talking on the last 2 weeks ago for the Marine Corps birthday that week. I got to be in a room with 3 recipients of the Medal of Honor. I'm going to tell you something. That's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. But we have to educate our youth. We have to educate our community, just like we do our deputies every day, you know, to whether they're going out to answer calls or what we're doing as a nation. How many of you knew that we spent last year in the consumption of drugs in the U.S. that we sent back into Mexico right at $400 billion a year? Think about that. Think about that. The consumption of drugs in the U.S. that we sent back into Mexico was right at $400 billion a year that we could account for. I can tell you right now, if we had $400 billion, we could find something good to do with it. We could do something for our communities. We could do something for our children. I always tell a funny story about when I graduated from Good Hope, I had an opportunity to walk on at the University of North Alabama. And I tell everybody, I said, I love football. I mean, I absolutely love playing football. But I didn't like school, and I didn't know you had to be successful at both to stay there. And so after a year, I still love football. I was not good at school. I said, well, I'll join the Marine Corps. And at 30 years old, I went back to school. Somebody said, well, why did you go back to school at 30 to finish your degree? I said, well, number one, the Marine Corps paid for it. But number two, it was to tell my children I finished what I started. And I think that's where we're at in society. We have to stand up and tell our kids, this is what you do, this is how you do it, and this is the right way to do it. You know, we're in a different time and a different in society. One of the things I tell everybody, whether it's deputies that are coming in to achieve their goals, nothing is free. Nothing is free. If you want to achieve something, you've got to start out and work. If you'll work, you can be very successful. Everybody in this room is successful, but it's because you work. You do what is necessary to do right and to be successful. That's what we've lost as a community. That's what we've lost as a nation. You know, one of the greatest gifts we had, and Bear Bryant always said this, who was a great leader on the football field, you know, every day is a blessing. You know, the day we have today, the second we have today will be gone because we're trading a day of our life for it. So think about it. This second, this moment that we're talking, we'll never have again. The day we're born is the day we start to die. And in that, we can make it a positive or a negative. A positive or a negative. But it depends upon us. And that's what we have to do as leaders of the community. That's what we have to do as law enforcement. You know, we're in a time of unrest with law enforcement in the nation. And that's what I tell the deputies. Look, we have to work hard to keep our bonds with the community. I always tell a funny story. I love the firefighters. I love the firefighters throughout the county, the volunteer fire departments, because, you know, they're doing it for free. They don't get paid anything. And I can remember being a young deputy. And does anybody know where Lions Club Landing is? It's on the furthest point of the Coleman-Walker County line. And I can remember being a young deputy down there, going down to a call because there was a stolen vehicle down there in the middle of the night. And I get down there, there's 2 guys and 1 girl. And so I get down, I'm talking to them, stolen car, and the one guy's putting his shoes on, which is a telltale that he may not want to stay there. So I get 1 handcuff on him because there's 3 of them, 1 of me. And when I do, his girlfriend attacks me like a wild banshee, okay? She's rough. So I get handcuffs on him, he hits the ground. I grab her by the hair of the head, take her to the ground. Luckily, the 3rd guy was so drunk that he was having trouble standing up. So me and her's rolling on the ground, we're fighting. I'm trying to be a little, I mean, she is a lady, and I'm trying to be a little easy until she bit my hand. And I'm talking about, when I say bit, I'm talking about bit. And so then it was all over but the crying. And so I shoot her with a taser. The guy goes up to kick me. I shoot him at the same time in the crotch. He hits the ground. Drunk guy comes running. I stand up and punch drunk guy in the mouth. He hits the ground. I've got them all handcuffed. So I get them in the back of my patrol car, 2 of them, the 2 guys. I got her sitting down in front of my car, and she takes off running towards the lake. And so you can have, it was on body camera. I had the very first camera in my patrol car. The town of Dodge City and one of the churches went in. They helped me buy a camera. And I'll never forget seeing me run. I was pretty mad at this time. And I'm yelling at her, if you get in the water, I'm going to drown you. So I catch her. About the time we hit the lake, and I catch her and I drag her back, and she's fighting and kicking. So then I just shove her on top of those 2 guys in the back of the patrol car. And I'm bloody, my uniform's ripped to pieces, they're bloody. And I get on the radio to have an ambulance come down and check them. It ain't 5 minutes, and I hear a truck come off a hill. Boom, 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 boom. And it pulls up and slides right up next to my patrol car. And the first thing I see come out of the window is a gun. And the guy says, Matt, who do I need to shoot first? And it was Cigar, one of the firefighters from Cold Springs. And I said, we're good right now, but I appreciate you coming checking on me. But that's what we are as a community. We're a community that takes care of each other. And that's the way we have to be. That's the way we have to educate our children to why we do things the way we do. Because if you ever lose that, you will fail. And that's what I tell the deputies. If you ever lose your ability to sit down in a restaurant and eat with your community, get out and talk to your community, then we will fail as a law enforcement agency. That is one of the top priorities that we have as a community and as a nation. But it starts with us. It starts with us at home. It starts with us teaching our kids, our grandkids, the right and wrong. You know, that there is the word no. There is, you can tell them no. I tell my boys, I have 2 boys that are 13 and 11, and I tell them they live in a dictatorship till they're old enough to leave. Their mom and I are the dictators. They do not live in a democracy. They live in a dictatorship, and we're the dictators. And so it's a joke. We'll be talking, and they'll say, well, we live in a dictatorship. I said, yes, and your mother and I are the dictators. But think about society. Think about what we are facing as a nation. Think about the unrest. You know, the worst thing in the world that we have is this right here. The worst thing in the world that we have is this right here. And the reason why is it creates perception, not reality. And I think in this room as leaders, we need reality, not perception. You know, I tell people, when we do a thing called Citizens Academy, Sheriff Roden started it, and when we took office, we got it back going. And we take our citizens through a 9-week course. And one of the classes we do is perception versus reality. And it was an incident in Coleman. Got a video the little girl filmed on Facebook, and she posted. And so I show people the video, and then I show people the reality. And we talk about it. We talk about how that is perception, not reality. And one of the greatest things that we can do for law enforcement and a community is teach people reality. Teach them, hang on just a second, let's find the truth. And when you find the truth, it changes your perception on things. And I think in this room of leadership, it's one of the greatest things that we can do. One of the greatest things that we can do. You know, in law enforcement, we face a lot of adversity. How many of you know that in 2017, I got sued by the Southern Poverty Law Center? I got to be the test case for Alabama. So yay, Sheriff of Coleman County, right? So there was a lawsuit that went across the nation over bonds. So in 2017, I got sued over bonds. And basically, this was the gist of it. No matter what you're arrested for, whether it's drugs, rape, murder, robbery, it doesn't matter. You walk in, you sign your own bond, and you leave. If you're indigent. If you have a job, so all of you have a job, you make money, you pay taxes. If you have a job, your bond should be way up here. But if I'm a drug dealer and I say that I'm indigent, or I abuse children and say I'm indigent, then you should sign your own bond and walk out. So in 17, I got sued. It's still pending today. We went in front of the 11th Circuit a year ago, so December a year ago, and we're waiting on the ruling. But that changed the scheme of how we deal with things. And it really breaks my heart, because I have mamas and daddies that will come to me and say, we want to keep our kids in jail because they've been arrested 6 times for drugs, and we want them to get clean. We used to have vices in place that we could help them, but we can't help them right now. And it breaks my heart. I mean, it really does. It breaks my heart, because law enforcement, not only do we deal with the good things, but we deal with the bad things. And if we work together to solve both, that brings strength. That brings strength. And that's what we have to have as a society. That's what we have to have for each other. And those things are what we need to continue to have a community the way we have it. One of the things I like to do, I like to open up for questions. And I don't know if they can ask questions online or not, but if they can, then I would love for them to ask questions online. But one of the things I like to do is open it up for questions, because I can get up and talk all day long, but there's things that you're thinking about, questions that you want to ask, and I want you to ask them. So I want to open it up for questions. All right, now we're leaders, so we got questions. Yes, ma'am.
Back to the bond issue, is it still at that point where they can just sign themselves out?
It is. It is. We have to do a thing called a bail request form, which brings it in front of a judge, and then it's the judge's choice on what the bond level is. So it's a lot of time and a lot of paperwork.
But it's income-based.
It is. It is. And I knew we were in trouble when I walked in front of the federal judge, and I spent 8 hours on the stand, but we walked in, and I said, they said, this case is about the taxation of the poor. And I said, we're in trouble. You know, and really it's not. Has nothing to do with that. It's a nationwide lawsuit. Every case has been won across the nation. And like I said, we're dealing with ours now. But it's been since 2017. Only cost us $257,000 in attorney fees. If you know any attorneys, they make good money. So cost us $257,000. Questions? One of the things I think that y'all are going to see is in the workforce. Used to, we had stacks and stacks of applications. But when we talk to young people today, no lie, because we'll interview the young people, and I'll say, hey, you know, law enforcement's difficult. There's a chance that you may get in a fight, and I'll ask people, have you ever been in a fight? No, fighting's bad. We've never been in a fight. Never been in a fight. And I said, okay, well, just know that most criminals in this jail have been alive, or have been criminals longer than you've been alive. So it's real hard to recruit young people when they didn't grow up with a little bit of grit or work ethic. The last 3 guys that we had that we hired and that left pretty quick, did you know the reasoning for leaving? They couldn't see their girlfriend enough. They come in there and they said, well, we're having to work a lot, and we like to go see our girlfriend, and you know, it hampers our ability to go visit our girlfriend. And I was like, well, if you make money, you can at least take her out and buy her dinner, but they don't have that same mindset. The work ethic is changing, and we have to get back to teach them, hey, this is why you work. You work for your family, you work to have things to build, but it takes a little effort. And I think that's one of the greatest things that we as teachers can do.
We had a question.
Okay.
Somebody was asking if someone's charged with murder, can they still sign their bond, or what the limit is on that?
Yes, so they can. Now, we will petition, if it's a murder case, just like anything else, we petition to the judges and say, look, you know, we need a bail request, we need a secured bond. Typically, we're asking for cash bonds because it brings accountability on them. And that's what we usually go for with somebody that's charged with murder. But under this, they could technically sign themselves out if there's not a bail request completed. Questions? Questions? Oh, we're quiet.
So why did they sue you, the sheriff's department, instead of the judicial system?
So they sued both, but I do not have judicial immunity. So the judges have a thing called judicial immunity. So even though you sue them, they cannot make the judges do anything. But I don't have that pleasure. So I do not have judicial immunity. And so the federal judge can make me do something because I do not have that immunity. So, okay, I've got a history question. How many of you, or how many of you know who is the only person that can arrest a sheriff? The coroner. That's right. First time I met Kilpatrick, he came up to me and looked at me and said, you're only a bullet or heart attack away from me being the sheriff. And I said, well, you're right. So the sheriff of a county is the oldest elected position in U.S. history. The sheriff of a county still has the ability to swear in and mount a posse. So today, if something bad happened, I could swear each one of you in, and you can go out and arrest people under the authority of the sheriff. How many of you knew that? Anybody? You can go out, I can swear you in, you can go arrest people under the authority of the sheriff. I usually get a lot of ladies that said, if you will swear me in for about 24 hours, I'm going to go home and deal with my husband. And I've got some stuff they need to do. But yes, so it's a unique position. I always like talking to when we do it in Ms. Bruner, Ms. O'Rear's classes, I'll say, how many of you know how you become the sheriff? Now these are college kids, and they're like, and I said, come on now, none of them, you know, maybe every once in a while somebody will say, well, you get elected. I said, yes, you're voted on by the people. And then I'll say, how many sheriffs do we have in Alabama? And it's silence. I was like, come on, guys. There's 67. We have 67 counties. And so I always like talking to college kids because they're funny. The mindsets are funny. And that's why y'all have such a strong influence over them of right and wrong and what we can do as a society.
Who chooses the amount of bond for each person?
It's up to the judge. So there's like a 3-page questionnaire that you have to fill out. And it's how much money you make, what kind of ties you have to the community, do you own property, all of these questionnaires, and then it goes in front of the judge, and the judge reviews it, and then the judge, so there's 3 types of bonds. So there's, of course, your ROR bond, that means you walk in and you sign. Then there's a secured bond, that means like a property bond. So somebody can post property, and then there's a cash bond. The way Alabama law is written, there's only those 3 kinds of bonds. ROR, which is you sign your own. The secured bond, which is like if you own property or something, somebody can come and post their property to make your bond, or cash bonds. But there's a 3-page questionnaire that the person would have to answer before the judge would dictate what the bond might be. Questions?
What is the arrest procedure? Is it different between, say, an illegal alien versus a citizen?
No, it's not. The arrest procedure is exactly the same. The only thing that is different is when we run their fingerprints and we get a hit that they're an illegal alien, then we contact ICE, and immigration has 48 hours to send a detainer and to pick that person up. So if they're going to, let's say they're a multiple re-enterer, or maybe they've been convicted of felonies and it's illegal for them to be in the U.S., then when they hit and their fingerprints hit, ICE will send us a detainer, and then they'll come and pick them up within 48 hours, usually somebody from Etowah County, because that's the only ICE detainee facility we have in Alabama. Yes.
So you referenced that the drug problems, that primarily it's meth, but the heroin has been on the rise and it's coming from our kids. What age range, are you seeing that with? Is it, we would like to think mostly teenagers, but younger kids too? Like, what's that going with?
We're looking at 18 to 30. Now, I don't get to do as much as I used to, but when I would go into schools, I would poll the kids, and I would say, look, I made teachers close their eyes. I said, you're not going to get in trouble, but I want you to be truthful. And I would always ask the questions, how many of you have or know someone that has brought marijuana to school? 70% raise their hand. 70%. And I'll say, how many of you know somebody that's brought pills to school? We're getting about 40% know somebody that's brought pills to school. And then I would do meth, and then, meth was about 10%. And I started getting heroin, and that was 7th, 8th, and 9th graders. 7th, 8th, and 9th. And in the last school I spoke at, we were at about 6% of the kids knew somebody had brought heroin to school. And I'll tell you how funny kids are, and I'm just going to be honest, kids are stupid. Really, we know they're right, they're stupid. So I get a call one day, and they said, hey, and this is still when I worked narcotics, they said, will you come to the school? We got a kid that's brought pills to school, and they're passing them out. So I get there, and I get the package. I'm talking to the boy, and he said, man, this was awesome. He said, man, it's the greatest high I've ever had. Me and my buddies, we got high, and we just enjoyed, we relaxed, and we enjoyed it. So I'm looking at the pill package, and I said, son, I don't know a lot, but I know 2 things. Number 1, you didn't get high because there's no controlled substance in these pills. And number 2, you're not going to get pregnant because you're taking your mother's birth control pills. But they had no fear. I'm like, buddy, come on now. Come on. But they had no fear. And I go to, don't be dumb. At least read the package before you take it. Come on now. But we see that with those kids because they'll go to parties or whatever, and it's easy access. Why? Mamas, daddies, grandparents, we have pills in our cabinet. Think about having surgery or getting pills that you get them filled, but you never take them. So you never take them, they're in the cabinet. Who's going to go check their pills? Nobody. Very rarely does people even pay attention to them. They may be in the drawer for years and you never pay attention to them. Guess what those kids will go do? take one at a time, 2 or 3 at a time, depending on what they are. And then they pass them out to their friends. Why? There is no fear. We're averaging about 20 heroin overdose deaths a year in Coleman County. How many of you knew that? How many of you knew that we have 3 suicidal or homicidal calls a day at the sheriff's office? That's where they are wanting to kill themselves or someone else. We're answering 3. We've been in 7 standoffs with mentally ill people. I'll tell you a funny one. We had a guy that was shooting at us. Deputies pulled up. It was a domestic. He shoots through the windshield of the patrol car, shoots the patrol car up. So we all get there. It's on a Saturday. And the city's got an armored personnel carrier. So it's like a big metal truck that can haul people. So we get it there, and we always work with the city. So our SWAT team's there, the city SWAT team there, and the guys in the house. And I will tell you this, if there's a naked man shooting at you, you know it's a rough day, right? And he was naked as a jaybird and shooting at us. So we're standing there behind the armored personnel carrier, which is a big hunk of metal. So I'm not really too worried. And SWAT team's over here, and the guy starts shooting at us again. Pow, pow, pow. And the SWAT team gets in the ditch. And if any of you know Captain Blackwood, he's been here since like 1985. He starts calling them names because they're hiding in the ditch. We're standing there, and the chief deputy's got his phone out saying, "What is the score of the Alabama game?" So, and you can hear gunshots. We got our priorities right. But no, we've been in 7 standoffs with mentally ill people. Mentally ill people. Why? We have nowhere to put them. We have nowhere for them to get help. You know, one of the greatest losses we took as a community and as a state is when they did away with our mental health facilities. When they did away with our mental health facilities, it put the burden on the people. And I'm talking about us. And so when you have people that have mentally ill problems and they need places to go, because what would used to happen, we'd get an order, we would take them, they would send them to a facility. A lot of times they may be there for 6 months. They get regulated and they come back out and they're okay. And then, you know, you might have to deal with them later on or something, but typically they would get the treatment they needed and get right on their medicine or whatever. If they were real bad, then they may stay in long-term facilities. We have 0 of those now. I mean, it is almost impossible. So guess what happens? They're out with us. They're walking up and down the road. They're walking up and down the street. And if you've ever dealt with somebody that's mentally ill, that's a tough situation. I mean, our jails are no place for them. Our jails are no place for them. And we have them in our jails today. Because why? They're going to go out and they're going to do bad things. They're going to commit crimes. And then we're dealing with them in the jail. We have 24-hour medical now in our facility. 24-hour medical. It cost us $750,000. How many of you knew that we spend more money on dental work in our prisons than we do feeding or housing inmates? And that's the Department of Corrections. How many of you know they were releasing people as fast as they hit prison? We had a guy here and he was arrested for burglaries because they consider burglaries a non-violent crime. Now, I want to be honest with you. You come kick my door in, that's a violent crime to me. I had a guy, he got arrested for stealing and burglaries. He left to go to prison on a Friday. On Sunday, they called me and they said, "Hey, Sheriff, this guy's back and he's wanting to ride home." That's a problem. You know, we're facing a lot of problems. You know, and those are things that we as a community are dealing with. We as a community. And guess what? You're going to deal with students that are mentally ill. And you may not realize it. And you just always have to be prepared. One of the things that we do at the Sheriff's Office is we do our firearm safety classes. To this date, we've taken over 2,000 people to the range and taught them how to use their weapons. Because we know law enforcement may be minutes away, but all you have is seconds to protect yourself. We do our ladies' self-defense classes. I always like the ladies' self-defense class because we get over there and when the guy's teaching, I said, now listen, ladies, when y'all go home, you can do kung fu on your husbands. All right? Go home and get them all in the kung fu positions. But you have to think about those kind of things. You know, you have to think about what's going on in society. But questions?
Can you share any data within Coleman County on homelessness relevant to the mental illness or even outside of that increasing, or has it remained static?
Sure. So what we see, we don't see your traditional homelessness. We don't see what we see in the major cities like Huntsville and Birmingham. Typically what we deal with is those that are doing it by choice. And what I mean is they're doing drugs. Now my mama won't let me come home. My girlfriend won't let me stay there, or I'm jumping house to house. Or, hey, I'm doing all these things. I'm gonna go throw up a tent in Heritage Park or something like that. That's typically what we deal with. We do have some transients that will come through on the interstate. I laughed, Corey Harbison, when he was the mayor, there was a guy that was panhandling for money. So he was panhandling, Corey pulls up and says, hey buddy, where you going? And he says, I'm going to Birmingham. Corey says, okay, jump in. He says, okay. So they go down the interstate and they're headed south. And the guy says, where are we going? Corey says, well, I'm gonna take you to Birmingham. He says, no, you can't take me to Birmingham. My car's up here at Jack's. I need to go get my car. You know, we do have problems. Our problems are different than what you see in Huntsville and Birmingham, where you're talking about people living under the bridges and doing those kind of things. Ours, most of the time, are by choice, or their circumstance of mom and daddy's not going to let them come back home. We have multiple avenues for people to get help. It's just like our jail. We have 33 programs that come in our jail and minister to the inmates. 33. We have a chaplain service at the sheriff's office where if there's true homeless people, that will help find them places. They will either pay for them hotel rooms while they find them permanent, residents, or, those kind of things that go on through society. So we're very blessed. We're a very giving community. But a lot of times it's by choice that we deal with homelessness here versus Birmingham or Huntsville, where you have true homeless shelters and those kind of things. Questions? Questions?
Has road rage increased, or is it a problem in this county?
We do deal with some road rage. We've had 2 incidents in the last year. One of them was last week at Dodge City, road rage incident, and a guy actually shot at some people. We arrested them. They're in jail today. And then about 10 months ago, we had one on the interstate, and it was a guy out of Mississippi and another guy from another state got into it on the interstate, and they shot at each other. And I think it's society. I go back to my granddaddy, who, and if any of you knew, he was a farmer, grew up, and he was always on me about keeping my name clean, keeping my name clean. And I would think about that, and I would say, Papa, I'm taking a bath, I'm doing all the things I'm supposed to. But what he was talking about is our name as far as our reputation. What the choices we make today will follow us the rest of our life, good or bad. And he always told us to keep our name clean. But I relate that to the young people in society today. You would think that we would be a less violent society. That is not true. When I started in law enforcement in 1999, I was hired August the 1st of 99. We might get in a fight with somebody, roll around on the ground or whatever, but once it was over, it was over. Kids and the youth do not think that way. I had a young man, he was 18, shot into a house. Just a random, you know what, it was over? An ounce of marijuana. So he goes by, shoots into some people's house. The wrong house, almost kills a preacher and his wife. So we're trying to figure out who this guy is. We get him, so we get this kid. He's 18. So I'm talking to him, and it tickled me because I'm talking to him, and he's talking about being a gangster, and he said, "Man, I'm just trying to survive in this world." He said, "I'm just trying not to be killed." And I said, "Son," I said, "you live in Coleman, Alabama. You're not in an inner city where you're getting in shootouts every day." He says, "Yeah, but everybody's trying to kill us in society and this and that." But he had it engrossed in his brain that he lived in a war zone. And that's how you deal with problems. And that's what we see a lot of time with the youth of today. They don't know how to solve a problem. You know, they don't know how to resolve a conflict without, "I'm going to pull out a gun and shoot somebody." They have no value to life. No value to life at all. You know, used to the older inmates that we had in jail, you know, they wanted to keep their place clean. Even though they're in jail, keep it clean, keep it nice. The youth today are, and I call them, they're thugs. They have no value to life. They have no value to where they're at, their place, and that's the way they live in that environment. And it's a different mindset. And so, and in reference to the road rage, what we see is that's all they know. Number one, they don't know how to get in a fist fight. So all they know how to do is pull out a gun and shoot at somebody because that makes them tough, or that makes them a man. About 4 weeks ago, I'll tell you a funny story, and I imagine Sheriff Roden faced this too, but like I get the itch, like, and these ladies know me, like I still want to go out there, get bad guys. I'm blessed to live in a county where I can go to work. I can, as the sheriff, can still go out and get bad guys, do all the things. So even though we're doing all this over here, and I get an itch every once in a while, and so the lady that's over dispatch will call my secretary and say, "Will you please tell him to come back to the office? He's driving us insane." But I stop a guy, and we're looking for a guy that had warrants, and he's stealing and being a thug, and so I'm dealing with a guy, and I knew something was going on with him, but he had an Uzi in his pants, like a machine gun Uzi. And so I talked to the guy, and he had an Uzi in his pants, and I was talking to him, and I said, "Son, you do realize the moment you pull that out to use it, I would have killed you." And I said, "There's no reason in society today for you to be doing what you're doing." And he'd been to prison, and he understood, and he was young, he's young. And I said, "You're riding around with an Uzi in your britches. Number one, I don't know how you keep your pants up because it's a heavy gun. But number two, if you pull that on somebody, they're going to shoot you. They're going to kill you." You know, and that's the problem that we're dealing with in society today. But I know we're almost out of time. Any more questions? Again, it's been a blessing to talk to y'all. Thank y'all for allowing me to come. I'll be around. I know we got another speaker, but I just want y'all to know how much I appreciate you, because you do not realize the impact that you have on children's lives. And I know most of them's grown, or they think they're grown, but you can have a huge impact on them. And I thank y'all for doing that. So God bless y'all and have a great day. Thank you.